Today we're going to talk about Google Author Authority. And my name is Bob Stewart. I'm the community evangelist here at ActiveRain. And so why spend the next 60 minutes with me? I want to give you a little bit of background on who I am and kind of what I do here at ActiveRain, and maybe more particular to why you should listen to me as it relates to any kind of advice about ranking better in the search engines. And whenever we talk about this thing, I will always admit I don't consider myself an SEO expert. Like, people don't pay me to increase their website presence. But over the last 10 years, I have been in real estate to some degree doing search engine optimization, whether that was for our brokerage that we had prior to launching ActiveRain, or whether that's been for the last 6 or 7 years here at ActiveRain. And during that time, we have seen a lot of things shift. And some of those things we've been very in front of the shift in terms of getting our sites set up so that we take advantage when Google makes kind of these monumental changes in the way that they rank content. Links would be one example. One of the early kind of catalysts for ActiveRain was that we did a very good job of creating backlinks to ActiveRain. It's one of the reasons that ActiveRain ranks so well for so long. Well, now we're seeing this new shift, and so I want you guys to kind of have a little bit of background on me and why I think, anyway, and granted, you take it with a grain of salt, right, when somebody says, here are my credentials. But here's one of the reasons why I think you might want to take some of the advice that I'm going to share with you today. So I want to start with what is Google authorship, because the concept of Google Author Authority is predicated on this idea that we get Google authorship set up and that we're taking advantage of this kind of tool that Google has given us. Now, on your ActiveRain blogs, you can set Google authorship up using that URL down there at the bottom, activeRain.com/Google-authorship. We walk you through step by step how to get this done. To get this set up on your own website or on a WordPress blog that you might have or something, you're going to have to do a little bit of investigation, okay? Literally to the degree of Google how to set up authorship on my website or how to set up authorship for a WordPress site. It's a very simple process. You'll probably find 3 or 4 different posts out there on the internet that give you tutorials and step-by-steps. Now, why is this important? Well, Google authorship is important for a couple of reasons, and the one that kind of got everybody all jazzed up and wanting to get this done was this idea that your face shows up in the search result. And this is called a rich snippet, this little image that now is potentially showing in search engines when somebody queries a piece of content where Google can associate you as the author. Our little face is showing up. And so initially this was kind of a thing where people said, oh, I want to have my face show up in the search engine results. Search engine results on Google don't change very often. The actual look of them doesn't change very often. And so when it was introduced that now they were going to have these rich snippets showing up, real SEO experts, people much smarter than I, went in there and they started looking and analyzing what was happening when a result showed in like the 3rd position like it does here, but it had a picture in it. Were we getting click-through rates that were closer to what you would expect in the 2nd and the 1st positions? And this was proving to be true, and so people were kind of excited. Right? Ooh, I can verify to Google that I own this content, and now they'll display my picture. But I believe when Google introduced Google authorship, this became the first step for them in giving themselves some kind of a hub or some kind of a foundation for which to determine who the real experts were as it relates to whatever topic they're trying to qualify results under. Okay, so Google's mission statement is to organize the world's data. It's to organize the world's data. Being able to verify who creates that data is a massively important step in this process, and I think part of why we'll see this Google author authority, or whatever they decide to call it, by the way, because Google has not come out and said, this is absolutely our next step, right? Matt Cutts, Google's the head of their web spam team and the guy that's kind of responsible for verbalizing what they're doing behind the scenes. Matt has come out and he's talked about Google authorship, and they've hinted at Google author authority. They've never called it that, but they've essentially said if we can verify what it is, we can verify who's creating the content, and then we can take a full look at that person, that starts to become Google author authority. Does everybody know who this guy is? You probably should. I get it. You may not need to know him to the site, but this is Eric Schmidt. He's the CEO of Google, and in a book that he had that came out this year, he said this: within search results, information tied to verified online profiles will be ranked higher than content without such verification. Now, Matt Cutts hasn't come so far as to say it will be ranked higher than content without such verification. But the CEO is saying this, right? The CEO of Google is saying, look, we want you to let us know what it is that you author. And knowing this, it makes sense then that Google would potentially start to rank content from authors that they trust more, that they would rank that content higher. I told you we've been doing this for 10 years, and so there's been a lot of changes in the way that Google looks at SEO, or the way that they kind of rank content. Okay, this is very much the 30,000-foot view, and there's all kinds of factors that go into this, and when a change is made, it's probably never as good or as bad as the purported SEO experts will act like. But this all kind of started with keywords, right? Google wanted to try to organize information on the web, and they started it out based on the idea of keywords. And in just about every space where ranking on Google, as it was becoming more and more popular, in just about every space where it was important, people try to figure out ways to beat this stuff, right? They try to figure out, how can I get myself to the top? And so when it was just keywords, we had real estate agents, we had all kinds of people, right? I mean, this happens in every industry, but it definitely happens in real estate. There's some value for us to being up there at the top, right? We had people hiding keywords in white font, and we had them stuffing it in, 1-point font at the bottom of the page, and there's some kind of all these attempts to get your keywords on the page, right? And so then Google kind of moves, and they morph, and they change, and in an effort to stay ahead of those spammers, they create this system where links and the number of links that point back to your website start to tell Google, is your website valuable? And again, we get that, this works for a while, and then we get the people that come in and they build these link farms, and they say, if you link to me, I'll link back to you, and websites come up where really all they're designed for is for people to go in and create their own links back to their other websites, and it starts to get muddied, and as the black hat SEO people come in, right, Google has to duck and dodge, and so now they say, all right, well, what about domain authority, and we'll make that factor in. So now it's not just links from anywhere, but if you get higher, quality links from a domain that we think is important, then that ranks better, right? And they're always kind of moving this thing because people are always trying to find the holes in it and build them out. And then we have social signals, and for the last year or two, social signals and the idea that, how many tweets or retweets your content got, or how many likes or shares, and these things would start to factor in. But Google's having a hard time getting some of that data from Facebook, right? Facebook's not sharing all of this openly with Google. Google's having a hard time just getting in mass levels this data from Twitter. And so social signals, while I absolutely believe they will continue to play a role in how Google ranks content, especially inside of Google+, mind you. But social signals, they haven't quite caught on the way I think everybody thought they were going to. And now we get to this idea of author authority. And for me, this is just another kind of way that Google can look out there and they can see, is this person worth ranking? And a lot of what we're going to see here as we go into author authority and how to increase our author authority is this idea is that Google wants other sources to verify you, or they want to verify you with really deep, rich content. Okay, now Google Author Authority, this is my best explanation of what it is. It's Google's comprehensive understanding of the value you provide as an author on a certain subject. Right? It's us letting Google know, here's why I'm an authority on this subject, and then it's them understanding the value that I potentially bring, which would make them want to rank me higher. Okay. So all that kind of setup, let's talk about how you build authority. Okay, how do we build author authority inside of Google? And mind you, right, Google's kind of the 800-pound gorilla, but it seems, as we looked at kind of our 30,000-foot view of SEO, the Bings of the world, right, the different search engines that are out there, and really Google's kind of, they are it in this space. You know, you have 65% of some space, you're kind of it. But the other ones tend to follow the same pattern. So when we think about building authority for Google, right, we're just building our online authority. Writing good blog posts. Now you guys are hopefully all bloggers, or you aspire to be a blogger, right? You take the time to come listen to me on Active Brain University. Chances are you're either a blogger or you're going to be a blogger. Or at the very least, you're creating content of some nature, I would hope. Now, writing good blog posts, like me saying it sounds very simple, right? You guys doing it, and you know this because you do it. It's, you know, consistently, it's not that simple. So here's a couple of things to consider as we think about creating content, really. And I said writing blog posts, but this is really creating content. So it could be a static page on your website. It doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional blog post, right? But when creating content that we're going to place online, depth matters. And it used to be, and we're talking even, as near as a year ago or a year and a half ago, you could put up a 100-word or a 200-word piece of content with very little, like if a real person was to read it, they wouldn't get a whole lot out of it, but you sure did get your link back to your website on there, and you sure did give them a chance to become a lead, right? Or you link them back to your IDX search. It used to be that those kinds of posts could rank. We are every day getting further and further away from the idea that you would throw something up that if a real person was to read it, they would find no value in it. Depth matters today. And as we start to look toward Google Author Authority, the depth of your content, I mean, you guys, I'm literally talking, Google is they're becoming your English teacher, right? Your professor who's like, you wrote this, you stated this, but you didn't support it with any facts. Right? That idea that more is better and a more detailed explanation, because think about it, the things that we might choose to write about in our markets or just as they relate to real estate in general, they're probably not best described in 100 to 200 words, especially if we want to prove expertise. Like if I'm writing about a subdivision and I want to prove that I'm the agent that's the most expert in that subdivision and the most capable of selling your home, can I prove to just any random person who doesn't know me at all that I'm the expert in 100 words? No, depth matters. Right? Tell me everything that I want to know about living in that community. Right? The idea that 1,000 words on something, I mean, it might seem like a lot for you to write it, but the idea that a consumer wanting to consume it, that it's too much, I think that's asinine. I think it's crazy to think that if I'm about to live somewhere, that I would be beyond reading 1,000 words or 1,800. There's these, like this in-depth piece of content about this subdivision that I'm about to move to, right? And you think about real estate and whatever it is, getting your home ready to sell, or the intricacies of the home inspection, or all this stuff you guys could be writing about. These things all lend themselves to kind of an in-depth dive. So the flip side of that then becomes thin content can actually hurt you. And again, remember at the very beginning, I'm not an SEO expert, right? Like, I just stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Like, not really. I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, getting stuff to rank. So you kind of take clues from the stuff that Matt Cutts says and the things that Google puts out there and the studies that SEO Moz runs, and you kind of try to bring them all together and you try to make sense of it. So I believe thin content will hurt you. If Google's saying, look, we want you to show us everything that you're writing as an author, man, we really value this stuff that has depth, then it would stand to reckon that thin content, right? But, do you guys all know what I mean by thin? Crappy, that's what I mean. Just the stuff where you just throw it up there because you're trying to get your 30-day challenge on Active Rain done, and you just wanted to get something out today. I think this lends itself to a kind of a look at least on Active Rain, and I can see people, oh, what about points? And I want to be able to blog something every day. And if you're telling me that it makes sense to do more in-depth stuff, I can't do one of those every day, but I still got to get my points. Maybe it makes sense to start using members only as a way to, right? That stuff gets hidden from the search engines. Maybe that thin content, that Wordless Wednesday post that you wanted to put up there, or the recipes, right? Because the next thing is off-topic content may have a negative impact on your blog. Now, I'm not talking about just one time, right? I'm not talking about, every third or fifth blog post you write something that's dear to you, right? You write about your kids, or you write about your church, or you write about, I don't believe that's it, but too much of that, right? Where it's like I got one post about real estate, and then I got a post about a recipe, and then I got a Bible verse, and then I got a, like that. When you start to get that off topic, I think that might have an impact. Now, as it relates to like writing about local businesses or local events, right? That's on topic because you're writing about your area, right? You're eventually trying to convince Google that you're an expert, and they should put your author rank or look at it through the lens of you being an expert in Seattle, let's say. Which is why it's important to understand the focus of your blog. I'm going to touch back on this here in a minute. A couple of kind of just things that you might consider. Okay, and again, Google doesn't send me an email and say, dear Bob Stewart, we think this is the best way to go about this. I just, having looked around a little bit, well, not a lot. I mean, I look around every day. I'm doing real estate related searches. I'm doing other kinds of searches just in my personal life, right? But one of the things that I think that may have some value is what I'm going to call stacking content for more comprehensive pages. And I'll do this in the framework of a market report. Right? So let's say every quarter, once a quarter, I do a market report on my blog for Wallingford. Wallingford's a neighborhood inside of Seattle. So quarter one, right, we're getting to the end of it here. I'm about to do my market report, so I write it. Then quarter two comes, and I believe what most of our members are doing is they write a new blog post for quarter two. And they write a new one for quarter three and a new one for quarter four. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. But when I go back and I look at Google telling me, look, we like this in-depth, meaty content, I believe it might make sense to stack quarter two's report on top of quarter one, right? Now what happens is after a year, we've got this one page that really has some depth for the market, for a market report in Wallingford, right? It can show somebody who is willing to read through the whole thing, and granted, it might get a little long, but it's comprehensive, right? We're not taking 4 different posts and kind of dividing up our potential to rank, right? We got this one post that's real meaty, and we just stack our content on top of it. You should absolutely go back and update subpar content. If you have stuff that you know kind of in your heart's heart that you just threw out there, Bob said you should get you should do a bunch of neighborhood stuff, and you kind of put them together. But when you go back and look at them, you think, I could probably improve this a little bit. You should absolutely do that, right? You already have the bones for a good piece of content. Go in and fill it out, right? Make it meaty. And you might consider pulling down off-topic content. But again, this is not just, if one time you wrote this really great article about some story from the weekend, like, it's not that, right? It's that stuff where you just know consistently you've gotten off, or you've just gotten too off too often. Right? I think that, like, in a world where Google's looking at the entirety of the content we produce and trying to assign, like, what is this person talking about and what are they knowledgeable in, it makes sense to try to give Google kind of that more narrow focus of what we hope to be considered an expert for. Okay, so that was blogging. It's kind of some tips around blogging, some things you might consider, right? Here's another way that we could potentially build our author authority, being a guest contributor on an other related site. And when I say related, I mean in a manner that relates to one aspect of what you hope Google kind of recognizes you for. And as an agent, right, we've got the two aspects. One is real estate, just the idea that we're an expert in real estate, right? The other side of that then is our geography, where we're at, right? So a guest contributor on an other related site, that might be related to our geography, or it might be related to our industry, right? So if we get our, like I showed you guys right when we started here, the posts that were being published on Inman this week. That's two awesome opportunities for those authors to build their author authority with Google, because they're being published on a site that Google clearly understands is all about real estate and has some very high quality content on there. Right? We have a thing at Active Rain. Well, if you are a guest contributor on another related site, one of the things to kind of remember is you want to get a link back to one of your profiles. And we're going to talk about how we'll share with Google what our profiles are, but this is kind of the way that you start to tie this stuff together. And we're going to go into Google Plus here in a minute. But we could be a guest contributor on other related sites. We have a program that we just started on Active Rain, and we started it around the most recent infographic that we did, which was biggest home seller mistakes. And the program is called our media team. On the screen right now, you can see activerain.com/media team. If you're not a part of our media team and you'd like to be, go to that URL and sign up. But essentially what our media team is it's us trying to help you guys get published or get coverage in your local media. So with this most recent home seller mistakes, what we did is we wrote like a template for a press release. And then you can go in and use that template and put in your own quotes, and we've got kind of some place in there. It's kind of like Mad Libs. Remember the old Mad Libs where you'd fill in the word and say adverb and you'd fill it in? Well, we're basically saying quote, fill it in, right? Story, fill it in here. Like we've got this press release related to the biggest home seller mistakes infographic that you can put your own spin on, right? We've got in the media team and a part of our media kit, we give you guys kind of advice on how to reach out to local media, to local reporters in your area, and how to create a story for them. Right? You can do this with you know, blogs that might be popular in your area. Like there's this one blog in Seattle. It's called the West Seattle blog, and that thing is super popular. They got kind of the breaking news and stuff. Like it's ripe to have a real estate agent contribute content there. There's all these kinds of sites inside of either, again, as it relates to your geography, or possibly kind of these real estate sites like Inman. I mean, that's a kind of an obvious one, but there's like Agent Genius. There's lots of kind of sites out there like that. You might even consider asking like a friend of yours who has a blog for you to be a guest contributor. So maybe it's your mortgage person is blogging. You might consider contributing to their blog. Right? The idea here from an author authority perspective is somebody else has allowed me to contribute on their domain, right? On their little piece of the internet, somebody else has trusted me enough to let me come over here and be an author. That lends to credibility, right? That's not me saying, hey, Google, look how smart I am, look how great my content is. That's somebody else saying it. Being cited in an article. So again, the media team. Right? We're trying to teach you guys how to look. As Chris and I were preparing for this call, he said, oh yeah, just throw that one up there. That's kind of like saying, just go date a supermodel. Like, we all want to just go date I mean, my girlfriend happens to be a supermodel, but I'm not kidding, but being cited in an article, this will take time, right? Building credibility with your local media is something that will lead to this sort of a thing happening. But when we get cited in an article by a news source that Google trusts, right? So like you think about your local paper, like the Seattle Times or the Mercury News or whatever. Google knows these are trusted sources, right? They realize that this media, they realize what this is. Right? This is not some fly-by-night blog. The Seattle Times is not some, just some domain out there. So being cited in an article, that lends well to building our authority, right? This is a real-life example of us as an expert. A reporter does a story about real estate. They seek us out, or maybe we created the story, right? And that's what our media team's hoping to do. We created the story for the author to write about. Of course they're going to seek us out. But these are the ways that we can build that author authority. I believe video, I mean, obviously years ago, Google made an investment in YouTube. Right? What at that time was a massively substantial investment. It's kind of funny to look back only, I don't know how many years ago that was, 5 or 6 years, and then think like Instagram actually sold for more than YouTube. But video is important, right? Google owns YouTube. By some estimates, YouTube is the second most searched site on the internet, right? Google gets searched the most, YouTube the second most. But it's not just any old video. And in fact, I might even suggest that like my YouTube page right now is mostly, in fact it's all, I think, videos of my son, like my kid, or your video, at least the stuff we're going to share with Google, we're going to connect our Google Plus profile to, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. It needs to be focused on your area of expertise. Right? This is kind of that next, I mean, this video has been coming forever, right? And it's always kind of right around the corner. It's going to be the biggest thing. I mean, this last year may have been the turning point for video where, right, the majority of people are consuming videos. They're doing it on their phones. They're doing it on their iPads. Right? If they land on a blog post on their laptops, they're doing it. Right? This becomes creating video content, right? But again, it's got to have some value to it. Right? And there's lots of ideas, right? Like the video tours of local neighborhoods, but even like when you do your market report, let's say, right? It might make sense to just record yourself verbalizing that market report. And then, right, now it's on YouTube. It's on that second most searched area out there. You'd embed it in your blog post. You kind of got that cross so that, hey, Google, as you're looking at my blog post, just know I'm using your video service out here, and I've got this video, and you'd want to tag it appropriately on YouTube, and that helps add things to the page. But the idea is, right, this all-encompassing, we are trying to get as many signals to Google that we're an expert as possible. Video is one of those opportunities that we have. So I talked about the kind of showing Google you're an expert from the perspective of geography, where you're at. If you haven't set up Google Places yet, let me just really quickly show you what I mean by that. See all these results right in here? So we've got a couple of kind of organic search results, right? The people we'd expect to see, the Zillows and the Trulias, right? Then we get a Realtor.com. We've got a news article. It'd be really cool if we were, in here somewhere. We're not, whatever. This area right here is an area that you can potentially be involved in. Okay, and I guess you gotta be careful you don't upset your brokerage or something, but like these people right here, like, I don't know, maybe if Windermere Corporate ever kind of got wind of this, like they would, it wouldn't be that great, but like Steve and Sandra have kind of set them, they're not Windermere, all right, but they've set themselves up in Google Places. They're Windermere agents. right? Ewing and Clark, like, I mean, I've been in real estate in Seattle for 10 years. I've never heard of Ewing and Clark, but awesome for them to have gotten in here, gotten their places set up. They've got their website onto the first page of the search engine where they may otherwise have never been able to. And as it relates to Google Author Authority, they've shown Google they're a real entity in this area. And that's one of the things that these big boys can't do. They cannot show Google they're a real entity in Seattle. And so places, and setting up Google Places, and there's the URL. And look, you can just go to Google and Google how to set up Google Places. But there's a process you have to go through. I think it includes like the phone verification and maybe even address verification. It's been a while since I know when I did it, the last time I did it, it literally involved an address verification where they sent you like a code to they mailed you a code. I'm not sure if they still have that as a part of this process, but you want to let them know where you do business geographically, right? Set up Google Places. And this is another one of those data supermodel things, right? The majority of people on here are not going to do this. But if you chose to, it would absolutely help your Google Author Authority. And the reality, I think, is that most of you are not going to do this not because you don't have content to do this. It's just a matter of time or a matter of effort. A lot of you, you've been blogging for any amount of time. You have enough content to create an ebook. Now it just becomes a matter of curating your own content and figuring out what you want the focus of the book to be on. Right? Google publish an ebook. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Can you create a Word doc with your blog post in it with a couple links out of it and some pictures? You have an ebook. The process is not very tough. It's just saying, I want to do this. Right? Now we get some reviews on Amazon. That helps our author authority. We get, you know, there's lots of kind of factors in here of ways that we can show Google we're an authority. The first step would be to publish the ebook. Then it would be a matter of getting the reviews. You know, and right as I say that, there's one I didn't even have in here. I think reviews in general are a good idea. And so for in places where you can get reviews, like a Zillow or a Trulia or some of these big real estate sites that allow your clients to review you, absolutely do that. Okay, I have no question that like a Zillow or a Trulia has schema.org markup on their pages, which is kind of this search engine deal, right, that tells them that reviews are reviews. Can't believe I missed that one. I think in my story about the Nobel Prize winning scientist, I don't know if you guys have read my blog post about this concept of author authority. I talk about this scientist, and in there I talk about his ebook and then how it gets reviewed. I also talk about a seminar he had that got reviewed, right, on Yelp or whatever, right? Yelp reviews would be another one where you're allowing Google to see that you're an authority based on somebody else's recommendation. Okay, so here's my warning. Before we transition into looking at Google Plus and kind of get an idea of how to tie all this together. Okay, I'm blogging, I got cited in an article, I've got some videos, I'm dating a supermodel, or I did an ebook. Like, how do we tie it all together? We'll talk about that in a second. Before we do that, I want to warn you guys about something. And as we think about this, well, again, it's what I believe. This is not fact. Matt Cutt's not come out and said this to be fact. But I just see everything kind of lining up to head in this direction with Google. Can you afford, in this age of author authority, to be a jack of all trades and a master of none? And here's what I mean by that. Because a lot of us like in Seattle, for instance, and we had our brokerage in Seattle, so I'm really familiar with Seattle real estate, and I'm familiar with how agents like to think in Seattle. And Seattle has, from Tacoma to Everett, let's say, is about, I don't know, with no traffic, it's about an hour and a half, and you've got about 6 million people in this area. And there's a lot of agents that would like to think, man, I'd sell a house anywhere from Tacoma to Everett. But if you're wanting to become an expert in the eyes of the search engine on Seattle real estate and Bellevue and Redmond and Kirkland and Issaquah and Federal Way and Tacoma and Auburn and Kent and Renton, are you going to have more success doing that, or are you going to have more success trying to show them I'm an expert in Seattle real estate? Right? Because think about it. If I could do 10 things in the next 20 days to kind of show Google my expertise, would it be more effective to do one blog post about Seattle, one video about Bellevue, one article I got cited in that had to do with Tacoma, another blog post about Issaquah, right? I mean, or would it make sense to have 10 touches, right, 10 signals to Google of my authority that were all focused on one thing, Seattle, Seattle, for instance? I think it would be better to have 10 touches all focused on one thing, right? It gives us more of a chance to make a mark in that one thing. The people I believe that are going to have the most kind of success and really see the fruits of these efforts pay off are the people that have really found niches in their business, right? The Seattle condo expert. There's a lady in Seattle, her name's Courtney Cooper. She's the houseboat person. She's Seattle houseboat expert. Right, now, that's not to say Courtney's never going to sell a condo in Bellevue. Right? I mean, but from the perspective of the search engines, she's going to be more effective if she decides to focus on something or maybe even somewhere specific. Right? The more we focus, the sharper chance we're going to have of being successful. Right? The more broadly you focus, right, the longer it's going to take to demonstrate that expertise. And I think ultimately the less chance you're going to have at being successful with this concept of Google author authority. All right. So we've given you some ideas. Now let's talk about Google Plus as a hub. This is absolutely essential to Google author authority, is understanding that Google Plus is not just this ghost town social media site that Google wishes would one day be as cool or as populous as Facebook. That is not what Google Plus is. At least it's not what it should be in your eyes. In your eyes, you should think of Google Plus as this hub and this place that you share with Google your expertise, that you try to prove to Google that you're an expert in something, right? Google Plus becomes that hub. It becomes the place that you go to do that. So what do we do on Google Plus? The first thing is a full and complete profile on Google Plus. I looked at 10 people, and I won't say your names, who registered for this class. They may not be here. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Of the 10 I looked at, no one had a full and complete profile on Google Plus. Not one of you guys. There are some people that are doing it well, and I want to show you their examples. And what I mean by full and complete profile is just in this about area, what's your story you're telling Google? What's your story? I want you to look at Anita's story. You don't have to read it, but if you were to read through it, it would be very clear what her expertise is, right? It's all about Warner Robins, real estate, foreclosures, HUD homes, corporate relocations. It's all right that she's, in terms of the subject matter, got a lot of stuff that she purports to be an expert in. And it's all kind of related to Houston County, Georgia, right? She's very clearly, and I think concisely, been able to share her story, right? She's created that full profile so that Google knows what Anita's about. It all starts with that story. Here's another guy that just does a really great job on Google+. And both of these are Active Rain members that very early kind of understood that when Google does something like this, there's probably a reason for it. Right, and so you'll see Bill's story. It's a similar deal, right, where he's getting in here and he's talking about real estate. So that would be the first thing I would say is fill out your profile and get that story into place. Okay? Everything that you show Google after this point should align with that story. Right? So if you're going to choose to show Google a bunch of stuff about Seattle, like don't try to make yourself if the expert in your story in 30 cities. Right? Be the expert in the place that you're going to try to be the expert in. Hope that made sense. Next, so you're going to full and complete profile in terms of the story, okay? You're going to connect all of your other profiles to Google+. All of your other profiles to Google+. Here's why. Remember I talked about social signals early on and how in some ways, and I believe this, social signals with Google and then being able to use them as a means of ranking, they're floundering a little bit with that. And it has to do with the fact that Twitter and Facebook are not sharing just these massive piles of data with Google. They're just not. So we kind of got to connect Google in and let them know. We got to let them know where our Facebook is. We got to let them know where our Twitter is. That way they can go out there and they can figure out how connected we are on in those settings. Right? If we got a Pinterest, we want to let them know about our Pinterest so they can see how many people follow our boards. Right? We kind of got to get in there and show Google all of the places out there where we got some social cred. Right? You guys have heard of street cred. Well, connecting all of our profiles is showing Google our social cred. I looked at 10 of you guys. 6 of you had something in the profile area. I was pleasantly surprised by that. 4 of you had nothing. Of those 6, 4 of you only had your active brain profile. You know what? In some ways, I swelled with pride over that. In other ways, I thought, oh my goodness, you guys have so much more, right? There's so much more. So in the About section of your profile, you'll come down here, and there's this little section called Links. And as a part of Links is this area called Other Profiles. And here's Bill Gassett, and he does a really great job, right? These are some of the other places out on the internet that Bill has profiles. YouTube, Yelp, About, Facebook, Reddit, LinkedIn, Twitter. He doesn't have his active brain on here. He should. But these are some of the other areas out there that Google's going to want to go and kind of, to the degree that they can, right, investigate what you have going on out there. Because if Bill has Yelp set up and it's got a bunch of reviews on it, he wants to make sure he lets Google know about those, right? Again, that's somebody else telling Google that Bill's a great guy, great realtor, knows his stuff. How do you do that? So, plus.google.com. I'm here, I land here. The first thing they're showing me is this just my stream, right? My news feed, what Facebook would call it. I come over here to home. I'm going to go to my profile. Now I'm on this is mine, right? My own profile. What I want to do is come to the About. See all these different tabs down here? Right, YouTube, I've connected my YouTube account. They're pulling in all my videos. They know. Right? But under the About section, here's my story. I have a horrible story. I need to tell them a better story about myself. This is what most of the 10 of you that I looked at, is what your stories look like. Down in this links section right here, at the very bottom, you can edit it. Now that I'm in here editing it is where I can go and add my other profiles. So my Trulia, my Zillow, my YouTube, my Twitter, my Active Rain, my Yelp, my Facebook, my LinkedIn. What else? Pinterest, right? Wherever you guys are active, you have something going on there. We're going to connect all of our profiles there. We're going to make sure they know a bunch about us. Let Google know where you contribute content. So there's this other section, and you guys, if you've set up Google authorship, and again, we gave you it's activebrain.com/Google-authorship. If you've set up Google authorship, you've used this contributors to section. Anywhere that you are contributing content, you need to get a link back to that that area. Right? So in the Google authorship, we walk you through this. Now, here's Bill's, right? He's got all these different places that he contributes content. He uses SlideShare, which I love, by the way. The Point 2 blog. He's on the Market Leader blog occasionally. Pinterest, House Hunt, right? He's got all these different areas in here where he has been a contributor. Get him in there, right? For a lot of you guys, this isn't going to be very robust at first. Hopefully it gets larger, right? Hopefully as you become a part of the media team and we're encouraging you to reach out to local blogs or to local media, that this thing starts to grow out a little bit, right? But look at some of the people. Here's Anita's, right? Who again was the best story that I've seen. But as we get down into her other profiles, she's got them all, right? She got even more than Bill does. There's a profile out there for her. She's got it tied in here. I like what she did here with her Coldwell Banker profile. If you guys are on your company's website, get that tied back to it. That's a great example in there. Now here's all the places she's contributed content. Her Trulia blog, right? Answers.com, her Active Brain, her WordPress blog, SlideShare, Realty Times, right? All these places. So we want to let Google know where you contribute content. And then we need to create links to content that demonstrate your expertise. And this is inside of that About section of your Google Plus profile. So what should I link to? And let me show you what I mean here, what this area is, and then let me maybe try to, it's this little area down here, links. And this is another one of those things, right? Google hasn't necessarily told us what this area is for, what we should be putting in here, right? And so Anita takes the kind of perspective that she's going to link back to some of her web properties, some of the places out there that she has content. I might actually, I would use this area to link to anything that I think shows Google that I'm an authority. It wouldn't just be everything and anything. But like Flickr would be a good example. If Anita's Flickr page is all pictures from Warner Robins in the area that she's trying to prove to Google she's an expert in, I would link to that. If it was pictures of just my Flickr, right, my kids and all sorts of random stuff and very, very little focus on Warner Robins, I wouldn't link to it. This links area I would reserve to link to things that show Google I'm an expert, or pieces of content that I have that I know have had a lot of traffic, a lot of comments, or a lot of shares. Now, that's not to say that I would not, like, because some of your kind of hyper-local posts that are, you know, maybe I'm writing about a subdivision, it's really good and in-depth, and I know it's got a lot of clicks, but it has no comments. That's all right. I still might put that in that links area. Great. Any of my posts that are just kind of those good general real estate that really show I'm knowledgeable in real estate, that might be something that I put in there. If my post got, you know, I showed you the 2 folks that got published in Inman today, that would absolutely be, the post on Inman would be something I would put in that links section. Right? And again, we can edit this by coming down to the links here and just saying, okay, I want to add a custom link. Now, see, like this one right here, and let's go to my, for me, this is a link to, I was lucky enough to have been published on Inman about this subject, Google Author Authority. Right? I was linked to that article out of that links section. Right? And all you're doing is coming down here and labeling it. And I would encourage you to give Google some context on the label. Okay, like and I don't mean to pick on these two because I think these guys are just amazing. Like what Bill and I'll just draw a blank. Anita, I'm sorry. What they're doing is awesome. Here's a great example. Top 10 Massachusetts home selling tips. Bill got the link in there, right? But I know Bill's got a lot of other content that he could potentially point the search engine towards to show his expertise, right? The setup on this thing might take a little bit, right? It might be an hour or something. I'm just, man, I got to pour through, get all this. It will absolutely be worth it. Once you get it done the first time, then it becomes a maintenance thing, right? Once a week, I look out there and I see, you know, did my content get picked up anywhere? Did I get anything published? Did I get quoted? You know, any of that stuff I'd want to bring back here and add to my link, to my links area, right? Did I become a contributor somewhere new, right? I need to come back and add that. Did I set up some kind of new profile? I need to come back and add that. Okay, and then like share the content you create on Google+. Right? We talked about setting up the Google+ profile, kind of sharing content on the profile so that Google understands who you are. But as you create content, absolutely share it on Google+. One of the things that I see a lot, and I'm connected to a lot of you guys on Google+, one of the things that I see people doing is they share the content, but they don't provide the context. And see, every time Anita shares, she doesn't just share the link, right? She understands that there's some value in what you write about the link before that. And so she's kind of using her keywords, right? She's not overdoing it, but she's letting you know, letting Google or the reader know what you're going to find in this piece of content she's linking to. This is kind of like you being able to give Google a page description for the page they're about to see. Don't miss this step. But also don't miss adding context to it, which Anita does very well in here. Right? If you are looking for a community to call home in Middle Georgia, you owe it to yourself to check out the Oxton Plantation subdivision in Warner Robins. Nice homes at a reasonable price. Right? Just a little bit of context. And then you have to participate. Now look, you don't have to participate on Google+. If you do, you will get more value out of this. You will have an easier kind of time of proving author authority, I think. And here's why. Because social signals in other arenas, Google is not tracking those as closely as they're tracking social signals inside of Google+. They just don't have an ability to. Like I said, Facebook's not sharing this data at a high level with them. Twitter's not sharing this large volume of data with Google and giving them a chance to sort through it. Google+, you can best be, you can be assured that Google has access to the data inside of Google+. So participation on Google+ is going to be, could potentially help you. I'm not going to say that non-participation would hurt, assuming that you're still sharing and you're kind of proving your authority to them, because then it will still help you in the rankings, right? But having these social signals, the potential for social signals, let me show you what I mean by that, because watch Bill's stuff here. Like, he got 58 plus ones, those are called. He got 19 shares. Right? Here are 5 ways to improve your results before listing for sale. 31 plus ones and 15 shares. Right? He's really starting to demonstrate to Google that he's an expert and authority in real estate. And how is he doing it? These people are helping him. Right? All these folks that are willing to plus one this. Right? All these folks that are willing to share. Look at the shares that he's getting. Right? These are the people, and the reason for this is because Bill's active. The first part of becoming active is getting connected to the people that you already know and are connected to somewhere else. right? And so they do a decent job when you come into people here of allowing you to find people, right? They got all sorts of, like, you can bring your contacts in here. You can, there's all kinds of ways to connect with folks. So I would encourage you to get in there and kind of start getting connected to people, right? Start going in and liking some of the stuff that other people are sharing. That's how, it's just like ActiveRain. It's just like your blog. It's just like Facebook, right? When you engage, then people start to engage with you. And Bill has been making a conscious effort to engage on Google+, because he understands the power of this platform being owned by Google. All right, we're going to take some questions here. It's almost the end of the hour. I appreciate you guys hanging out here. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Google Author Authority and what it is and how we can start to position ourselves to build our authority in the eyes of the search engines.